Welcome to the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast, where feelings aren't felt and snowflakes melt. Buckle up, it's gonna be a bumpy ride.
They painted over ants.
That second flush was a bonus ad item for our fans.
For everyone out there in podcast land, this was Koop playing a sound effect. Russ did not drag the microphone into the toilet.
You know, I would not be surprised if someday you'll say, "Yeah, Koop, I can do the podcast, but it's gonna have to be from my bathroom."
It would be Lee.
Okay, so I'm gonna play two clips back to back of Biden quotes this week that I found among the. It's really hard to sift through his debris and find anything that's not stupid. Matter of fact, I was just watching the news and something else popped up from his speech today. But I don't have audio on that right now, so let me just play a couple of audio clips back to back, and we will go from there.
Geography or ethnicity or religion or race or anything else. We're based on an idea. Literally the only country in the world based on an idea. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all women and men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Sounds corny.
Love how he modified the Declaration of Independence there, but okay.
One more. Okay, seriously. One more.
Let's get something straight. You remember, if you covered me from the very beginning, I did not say that, in fact, the sanctions would deter him. Sanctions never deter. You keep talking about that. Sanctions never deter. The maintenance of sanctions, the increasing the pain, and the demonstration why I asked for this NATO meeting today is to be sure.
All right, more stupidity, and let's just hash that out just for a couple minutes. The end of the first clip, he talks about that, and you're right. He fucked up the whole Declaration of Independence. That wasn't even the part that bothered me. The part that bothered me is he's talking to foreign soldiers and Polish, all NATO soldiers, including American soldiers, and says, "Sounds corny." Now, I could think of a lot of things that the Declaration of Independence is. Corny's not motherfucking one of them. Maybe it sounds idealistic. It sounds impossible to achieve, and or something like that. But corny? This is what they fucking think. This is what the left thinks of the sacred institutions and documents of the United States.
I think old Joe was trying to be hip and down with the cool young cats.
Yeah, who cares?
Like Corn Pop, because all the younger kids, they think the Declaration is all corny, and he's gonna be right there hip with them, as opposed to taking the opportunity to use the Declaration as an inspirational tool and aspiring to our higher ideals. The President of the United States referring to any of our founding documents as corny probably does not set the best example for us to the world.
Yeah, no, exactly. Using and I guess I can extrapolate and get what he was trying to say, that some of these people that were from foreign countries in the room may not understand. This is one of the most profound documents in human history. It actually started the revolution that took all of the foundation that Western culture was building in all these hundreds and hundreds of years and focused it on an idealistic government system, and basically said, we're going to change the world for the better using this one document. Declaration of Independence, in my mind, is even far more important than the Constitution. And I mean as far as what it did and what it changed. The Constitution was a result of the Declaration of Independence. And to a large degree, because that is really the sacred document. The Constitution maps out how do we try to get to this ideal that's in the Declaration.
Yeah, I would put the Declaration up there with the Mayflower Compact, the Nicene Creed, and the Magna Carta as some of the most foundational documents of Western civilization. And it's something that should be revered and spoken of in a revered way, not, hey, that might sound corny to y'all today. I mean, Joe, let's even accept the premise that some folks will say that because they're embarrassed about liking it for some reason. The president of the United States saying something like that, I don't think that really burnishes our image around the world.
No. Like I said, if he's trying to create this idea that this is something that might seem antiquated because we haven't achieved it and it's maybe not part of our gestalt right now, well, then say idealistic. This may sound idealistic, or this may sound in some ways unachievable.
That.
And
I can accept that.
Anybody who's patriotic or anybody who knows this knows that the actual tenets of the Declaration Constitution, it's impossible to achieve them perfectly, but striving to achieve them perfectly is what the whole thing is about. The struggle towards that ideal.
We recognize that we will fall short, but that doesn't mean we don't try to get there. And that's the beauty of the country and its foundational documents.
Michael Jordan goes out on the court all those times, and knowing that he's not going to be perfect, although he was damn near perfect in some of those games, he's not going to shoot 100%, but that's what's in his head, right? And he's striving to do that every time he steps out on the court, regardless of what happened the game before. I mean, that's a stupid analogy, but you're always striving to do that. Nobody goes out into the it was a serious athlete and goes, oh, well, I'm probably going to fuck up today, so why even try?
Well, you mentioned Michael Jordan. Here's a quote from him where he said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over again in my life." But notice how he was always still striving for success and striving to get better. It's one of the things that makes him, I would say with apologies, but I have no apologies to the LeBron fans, makes Michael Jordan the greatest basketball player in the history of the game.
Without question, he's the most competitive and the person pursuing perfection more than anybody else in the game. And since I hate LeBron as a human being, I'll just completely agree with you on that point anyway. The second one, a quote there that I played, the second video that I played, where he gets pissed off at a reporter, which he does all the time.
Everybody who says he's mild-tempered, and they haven't followed Joe Biden throughout his career.
Yeah, let me put together a mix of when he loses his shit with the press, and we'll see how mild-tempered he is. But he talks about that sanctions aren't deterrents. His entire administration, I actually did some research on this in the last 2 days because I heard that I actually watched the speech when I was working on, the crappy press conference, when I was working on some other things, and I was listening to it in the background, and when he said it, my head went, because no less than the people from the Pentagon, his own spokesperson, Peppermint Patty, what's that totally geeky guy in the State Department?
Are you thinking about the guy in the DOD that
yes.
Jack something?
Yeah.
Perfect. Maybe his last name is off.
He looks like that Fievel Goes West mouse wearing a really too big suit for him, with a really bad haircut.
Kirby,
he went
maybe.
to Super Clips for the coupon day for his fucking haircut. I can't remember. That guy absolutely has avocado toast every morning for breakfast. I can tell you that unequivocally.
Jack Kirby at the Pentagon.
Yeah, and he's never drank a cup of black coffee in his life. I can tell you that too. It's never happened. And that's actually Joe Biden's cabinet, man. There's nobody in his cabinet or his staff that inspires me. I was thinking about this, not as a quick aside, when Madeleine Albright died the other day. She was a person, she worked in the Clinton administration, but she was a person that garnered respect, including with me, because of she was a tough chick, and she knew her business, and she was smart. Some of her foreign policies I disagreed with, but I tell you what, if you put Bill Clinton's foreign policy up today, he'd be a fart-right Republican, as you know.
Oh yeah, without question.
Without question. But just seeing this doddering fool being weak, and then this morning, as we get in, we'll just segue right into the. I didn't give you a chance to respond to that. I'm sorry about that.
Just real quick, I do want to go back. Have you been watching recently The Walking Dead?
I have not watched it, and since the whole banging in the frickin' skulls and stuff, it jumped the shark after that with me.
Okay, well, for those Walking Dead fans who, like me, feel like we're too far into the show and it's almost near the end that we can't stop now, no matter how bad it's getting.
Right.
They're into a storyline about a community called the Commonwealth, which is like 50,000 people, and they have electricity and other stuff. And they have a spokesman named Lance Hornsby. Just go YouTube Lance Hornsby. He reminds me of Jack Kirby from the Pentagon. When I saw Lance Hornsby for the first time on TV, I thought, that's Jack Kirby. Just YouTube it. You'll get what I'm talking about.
Oh, has he been on there? Is he the gay character?
No, that's Aaron. I think in Alexandria.
Okay. I was going to say because he
This
looks
is a
like nothing to do with sexuality, but just physical looks. He looks like he should be part of Biden's cabinet too. That actor.
Well, this
Serious.
that's more of a soy boy thing than anything else, I think.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
the character of Lance Horn, if you just YouTube him, believe me, you will make the connection almost instantaneously.
Okay, will do.
I have a feeling that as you're about to segue in, you're about to bring up something that I have jotted down in my notes, I think.
What the hell was I saying?
Something about this morning.
Oh, yeah. So, what the hell was I saying? I swear, the only thing I'm on is coffee today.
How about if I give you what's in my note, it might jog your memory.
Yeah, go for it.
Did you hear what Joe was saying as he talked to members of the 82nd Airborne in Poland?
Yeah, don't jump.
No. This morning, in I guess some kind of dramatic escalation that no one was prepared for, when he was talking to the members of the 82nd Airborne, he said he was talking about what's going on in Ukraine. He's like, "You guys will all see it when you get there." And everybody went, "What?"
Oh, I did not hear that. No, that is new to me.
Oh yeah,
that's not what I was thinking about. Yeah, because he said a lot of stupid shit today. I missed the speech he gave a couple hours ago because I was running errands. So I missed that piece, but I caught a little bit of the aftermath on the news, and sounded like he gaffed himself pretty good again.
Yeah. So here's what he said. You're going to see when you get there, and some of you have been there. You're going to see women, young people standing in the middle, in front of a damn tank, just saying, "I'm not leaving. I'm holding my ground." And the White House had to quickly jump in and say, "Oh, well, he's not changing his stance on deploying the military into Ukraine." I love how the leader of the free world has to be corrected and covered for by his spokespeople. And let's be fair, some folks had to do that for Donald Trump too.
Sure.
But what I would like to see at some point in my lifetime, and I haven't seen it since parts of the first George Bush administration, although he had some of it, was I'd like to see a president who, when he speaks, I don't cringe.
Yeah, you've mentioned that. I get that. Yeah, that's kind of hard. I appreciated Junior Bush's stance on some things, and I certainly appreciate his how he treated the military in his tenure.
Absolutely, I liked George W. Bush.
Yeah, but
he could be, with the exception of like when he was standing on the mound of rubble after 9/11 with the bullhorn. That was a great moment, but he did have ways of when he talked, you just kind of went, you're kind of waiting for him to make that gaffe.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes all the way back to when George Bush the first on the campaign trail in '88 was giving a speech on September 7th and started talking about how it was Pearl Harbor Day. And then Bill Clinton, I just kept expecting him to say, "Whoa, did you see the tits on her?"
Right. Yeah, and everybody on the left, and even a lot of people who are center left center right and stuff like that, think Barack Obama was this charismatic, smart guy, and I think he was a drooling moron.
He got into office based on his speech to the Democratic National Convention in 2004, which I'll be fair. The speech in 2004 was a great speech. It was awesome. I watched it. Even I was inspired. Yeah. However, that one speech is what got him to be president, and he didn't govern that way, and he didn't speak that way the rest of the time. He had one good speech, and it carried him for the next 12 years. Right,
and and God bless America. People were excited about electing somebody who was the first black president. I mean, to be fair, biracial, but people were excited about that. He had a certain colloquialism and familiarism. He kind of had a more polished, refined Bill Clinton approach to the presidency. Well, Bill Clinton was playing his fucking saxophone on Jay Leno and talking about what kind of underwear.
Arsenio Hall.
Yeah, Arsenio Hall. Thank you. That's even worse. That's far worse. Trying to be hip and answering questions about what kind of underwear he wore. It was cringy, and not to mention all of his other desecration of the office itself. I don't think Barack was anything more than more polished. I'm not accusing him of any of that stuff, but a more polished version of just trying to be down with the folks, guys. Like I said, wearing polo shirts at press conferences or in the Oval Office. That just remember the last great president what he would say about taking off his jacket in the Oval Office?
You talking about Ronald Reagan?
Yes, I am. He refused to remove his jacket while in the Oval Office.
He had too much respect for the office itself.
Yeah, the great men that had sat in that chair and in that office. Yes, and that's, I don't know. I guess we don't need to necessarily be that way, but that's kind of fucking cool.
Yeah, well, Barack Obama, like I said, he had that one speech, but there were times during both the campaign and his presidency when he did say things that were cringy from, like when he was saying all those people that are clinging to their guns and religion, or when he told Joe the plumber he was going to take his money and spread it around. I mean, those were cringy things.
Yeah,
but he got a pass because people thought he was cool, even though he really wasn't. How
about which was a pivotal time, which was one of the pivotal events, I think, in race issues in this country, where he said, and I'm sorry I don't remember the young man's name who got shot, and he said
Trayvon Martin. When he said Trayvon Martin could be his son.
He could be his son, which he's referring to, I guess half of his heritage. He could be quarter my son, whatever the fuck the math is on that. That was so damaging to race relations in this country that
I think one of the hopes of a lot of people who voted for Barack Obama in 2008 was that electing the first minority president would help further heal race relations. Yeah. And what it did was it made things worse.
It did.
Because Barack Obama exploited a lot of our divisions for his own gain. Because if you remember, first of all, he changed the way that he approached 2012. He decided to eschew all the rural blue-collar voters and went after a minority-majority coalition. And so that he explicitly used racial undertones to try to split people in 2012. And also, let's not forget that as a result of that, he was the first president since Woodrow Wilson in 1916 to get fewer votes the first president that was actually reelected to get fewer votes in his reelection campaign than he did during his initial campaign.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that. Well, unfortunately, for the Republicans, they floated out some really bad candidates.
2012, the Republicans ran like nobody. I mean, look, I'm kind of ashamed to admit this. I did support Mitt Romney in 2012, given the options. I think he's gone way off the deep end now.
I think he's lost his effing mind, to be honest with you. I hope he retires.
The one guy I wish, Chris Christie, should have seized his moment in 2012. But what he was trying to do is he thought he would be ready for 2016. And when I saw the demise of Chris Christie's political opportunity to be president, that reminded me that you have to seize the moment. Barack Obama, to his credit, in 2008, I originally thought Barack Obama should see Hillary Clinton get defeated in 2008 and run in 2012. But he saw he had the momentum and he jumped in and it paid off for him. Mm-hmm. So to his credit, he seized the political momentum. Chris Christie in 2012 could have done that, but instead he stayed out and we were left with choices like, don't get me wrong, I like some of the policies of Newt Gingrich, but he turns off a lot of the American people.
And I can understand. I do too. I think he's brilliant, but I can understand why a lot of people go, ooh, I can't.
Yeah. Rick Santorum, I did not particularly care for him. You had Mitt Romney, who was the best of the choices.
Yeah, he was.
So it really was. I mean, the Republicans have not managed to put together a good nominee or a good crop. They did have a good crop of people in 2016, but because there were so many trying to get in, that's how Donald Trump got the nomination. Because if there's 16 people in, when you have 12% of a hardcore base of support, it looks like you're running away with things because everybody else is down around 5 or 6%. But right. It allowed Trump to get the momentum that he needed to get to the nomination. I liked a lot of the folks in 2016. Like I said, I liked Chris Christie. I liked Bobby Jindal. I liked Rand Paul. I liked a whole bunch of them, but unfortunately, it just didn't work out the way I had wanted. If we can somehow, don't get me wrong, if he gets the nomination, I would probably vote for Donald Trump. But if Rick DeSantis or Glenn Youngkin can get in the race in 2024, this is their chance to seize on their momentum.
Yeah, I agree, and yeah, all signs are pointing to the Florida governor, in my opinion. And
I would love to see that, but if Trump runs, it's going to clear the field.
Unfortunately, I really, God bless him for what he accomplished as president. Unfortunately, this doddering fucking fool and his administration erased all of those gains in less than 2 years.
In barely a year. I mean, Yeah, Joe Biden was handed a vaccine and an economy that was ready to roar, and somehow he screwed it up, and he demonstrated Neolithic incompetence in a lot of this stuff. Because everybody, one of the things that has changed about me over the last decade. Don't get me wrong, I'd like to have a nice guy in office, but a guy that I like his personality and everything. But what really matters is competence. You can have the nicest guy in the world. Jimmy Carter was a nice guy, but he was a incompetent president.
Yeah, he was a terrible administrator. Yeah, I mean, like you said, and he went on to have a much better after presidency life than he did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great American, loyal American. I don't think he did anything on purpose to screw anything up, but he was just that bad. Yeah, and that comes from the fact that he was a Navy officer, not an Army officer. Just saying.
Shout out to all the Navy folks out there.
Oh, Navy fans out there. I actually did read a white paper about that, about like the differences in leadership and roles in the Navy versus the other armed forces, and how that was a deficit to Jimmy Carter going through that program and stuff like that. I won't get into any of that, but it was actually pretty fascinating.
That'd be interesting to read. I have not heard of that, but I'd like to read that at some point.
I'll have to try to find that. That was many moons ago, but I'll have to try to find that and get you.
Hey, don't use many moons. That's cultural appropriation, young man.
What? Who am I appropriating?
That's what the Native Americans would say, because they didn't have the calendar, so they went off the moon cycles and many moons.
I'm sure
you never watched the Western?
I'm sure my people in the steppes of northern Europe and the icy fjords and all that probably used moons too as a timepiece.
They were too busy raping and pillaging their way to oppress all of the folks around the world, and then planting their seed everywhere so that they could be the dominant folks throughout the world.
You're probably right. And would it be appropriate when I say this, but would it be appropriate when anybody talks about culture appropriation, and if they're using anything that uses like electricity or any type of combustion engine, I go, you're culturally appropriating. You know who invented that, right?
Yeah. Not really sure that would go over very well for you.
But following the logic, I'm just saying.
Oh, okay. I get following the logic.
Yeah. Which like there is no logic. There is no logic. It's not about being multicultural in this country. You know that. It's not about that. So, funny aside, when I was in high school, I had this friend. We had, during our homecoming week, we always had like different themed.
You had a friend in high school?
Yeah,
I had no friends in high school.
I had to give him venison steaks. But no, I had many friends in high school.
I'm kidding. I know I had 2 or 3 out there, folks, but that's it.
And he was this big blonde dude, good-looking guy named Brad. And Miami Vice was at its height. And so we had these different theme days. And I don't know if your high school did this, but during homecoming week, every day had a theme, and we always had activities during lunch.
No, we were lame.
Oh, yeah. So it was different dress-up days. And like the ASB would decide. And I was the ASB president. Shocker.
I'm stunned.
And my best friends were all like the vice president, secretary, and we actually had a quorum of just my friends.
So
how did that happen?
Got it.
How did that happen? I don't know. Let me roll my eyes. So anyway, we had Idol Day. Okay, you got to dress up as your idol. So Brad and I both being pretty big dudes and stuff like that, and he, like I say, he had blonde hair. He's a good-looking guy. We put on some suits and dressed up as Crockett and Tubbs from Miami Vice. And,
I'm not going to ask how you went as Tubbs.
Yeah, I went as Tubbs. Yep.
Oh,
boy, was that hard to get off. That was hard to get off in the shower before football practice. And of course, I had a wig, and I had a little earring that was not real sticking out. But it was because we liked those guys. We weren't making fun or culturally appropriating. It's because we loved the show, and it's like, yeah, I'll do Tubbs. You look more like Crockett than me. I'll do Tubbs. No big deal. And that guy was a moose. He was like 6'4", 210 pounds, and it was like, you wouldn't look right as Crockett, so or Tubbs, excuse me. Anyway, so it was our way of showing how much we loved the show. And Miami Vice was the shit. Let me tell you, when I was in high school, that was like the show.
The closest that we came was in my AP U.S. History course, and we had a day celebrating the 1920s, and I came as Al Capone. And this was back before school shootings were a thing, so I brought a cap gun to class, which nobody blinked at the time. Could you imagine trying to do that today?
Oh, I got to tell you, and I think I've told this story here before too, but we're way off of a segue, but this is fun.
Yeah, and this has nothing to do with Ukraine.
And in my high school, I mean, you come to class because a lot, during the fall, if you weren't an athlete or something like that, a lot of these guys went out hunting right after school, or they might have hunted before school. You actually got 2 days off without 2 free days off without getting detention if you took them off, as long as you have a note from your parents. You could take 1 day off for hunting and 1 day off to go to the Puyallup Fair, the Western Washington Fair. And you would drive in my parking lot in the 1980s, and you would see at least 4 or 5 trucks with shotguns and rifles on the racks in the parking lot of the high school. And some of us, you'd be out hunting, and if you got a big buck or an elk, man, the first thing you do is drive up to the high school, park there, and all the teachers would come out and take a look at it and stuff like that. And one of the teachers who I adored, my 6th grade teacher, he knew how to do the Boone and Crockett measuring and stuff. He'd get his tape measure out there and figure out what the point system was. That's how I grew up. And guess what? There was not, all we used to do was a little fisticuffs on the bark in Jubilee Park if we had a problem with each other. I don't even remember anybody pulling a knife or anything when I was in high school. Nothing like that.
Yeah, you mentioned being allowed off for hunting or the Puyallup Fair. The big thing for me in North Carolina was you didn't get off school, but school basically stopped at noon on the day the ACC tournament began, and all the teachers turned on the television. And no joke, all the way through 12th grade, you got a couple of days kind of off in school because they'd play the ACC tournament. And friends of mine who did not believe it was real finally went to North Carolina and saw just how obsessed folks were. So that was our version of going hunting, was they played the ACC tournament.
That's awesome. No, I think that's cool. That sounds good to me. Let's get out of this Eddie Curran.
Rear this back.
I don't have the sound effect for stay on target pulled up. So.
We both need it.
Yeah, we do. Let's talk about Ukraine. The first thing I want to say about Ukraine, getting back a little bit to our foreign policy, and then I'll turn it over to you for some of the details of. I've been watching up to the minute stuff. There's kind of some fascinating developments in the last few days, even the last few hours from what I've seen. Could the Biden administration, milquetoast fucking pussies, quit saying, we don't want a war with Russia. That's the last thing we want. Would you quit saying that? Okay, that might be true, and that's fine that that's one of the last things you want. The last thing I actually want is to allow Russia to take over most of Eastern Europe. That's the last thing I want. I'd rather go to war than see that happen. But would you quit saying it? Because it's just like whimpering to a bully. Please don't hit me. I'm scared of you. I'm going to back off. You can have my lunch money. Now, they're not doing that to us. But when you verbally give those cues to a bully, all it does is embolden him. And when you keep what the administration, if that's their thought, the last thing we want to do is go to war with Russia, don't vocalize that. We're going to do everything we can to support Ukraine, all this bullshit platitude that you're saying is fine. Quit saying the last thing we want to do. That makes you sound weak. It lets him know. I think it's given Putin a lot of. I think he probably would be doing something different right now if we wouldn't keep saying that. You know, if Russia keeps up its current campaign of aggression and terror, then we will do whatever it takes to defend the rest of Europe. We will do that. You know, something along those lines. Not, We're going to go to war tomorrow, but I know Corn Pop has no idea what he's saying. He has no idea what's coming out of his mouth. But would you fucking at least quit doing that? I just wanted to lead off with that because it's really, really... I was watching a Democratic congresswoman talking on Fox News a few hours ago, and she just kept saying that over and over. The last thing we want to do... Fucking shut up. These are, like I said, these are the avocado toast fucking people. This is what happens when you put wimpy people into office that have never, ever, 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 ever had to do anything in their entire life to defend themselves or anything greater than themselves. I'm serious. I'm serious. All right, I'm done.
We at least need to introduce some strategic ambiguity into the situation. Because showing that you're not willing to fight at all, whether you want to go to war or not, and nobody really wants to go to war, but even if, let's say you're not this, a neocon, wanting to go everywhere or something,
right?
Showing some strategic ambiguity hopefully will at least lead to some hesitation. I mean, it's no accident that Putin did not invade Ukraine while Trump was in office. Not because I think Trump had any great strategic sense or strength, but because Putin saw Trump as unpredictable and he didn't know what Trump would do. And he had pretty certain, he had certainty about what Biden would or would not do. In Russia recently, in Ukraine, there've been two developments that have happened that have caught my eye recently. As busy as I've been. First, down in the Black Sea, I believe it was near Mariupol. I think that's where it is. The Russians were going to show off this great warship that they were going to bring into the port. They were going to show off this top of the line ship, and the Ukrainians promptly blew it up.
Right.
Which I thought was just absolutely awesome.
That was
and
awesome.
Then,
I'd like to have seen that.
The Ukrainian, I'd like to have seen, maybe Putin is not going to shoot his admirals and generals because they're all dying on the front lines anyway. It's also like, a dozen flag rank officers, which I don't even know how that happens.
I don't either.
The Ukrainians also retook either they retook it or they retook parts of the town of Kherson, which is a pretty big achievement against the Russians. Now, the danger in all of this, look, I am not trying to be a Putin shill here. As a matter of fact, I'm an anti-Putin shill. But dictatorships are different than democracies. What I mean by that is you're not going to shame someone into withdrawing. We got to find some kind of an off-ramp for Putin to pull back, because I think if he feels boxed in, he's going to up the ante rather than anything else. And when I say up the ante, we're talking possible use of like tactical nuclear weapons, and then the world is going to hold its breath. You have to offer him some kind of way to back down. And I think some Ukrainians are seeing it when you talk about when they talk about possibly acknowledging military neutrality and not going to NATO. I know Putin wants them to recognize Crimea. I don't think Ukraine will ever do that, but I don't know that it's necessary given that Russia has de facto control of Crimea. I wish they didn't, but they do. The real key sticking point is going to be the Donbass region, which was Putin's logic for going in anyway. And I still think what Putin is going to do, if he doesn't feel completely boxed in, is he'll try to claim he's being magnanimous and pull back to Donetsk and Luhansk and just say, all right, I've decided I'm not going to take all of Ukraine. I'm going to be a nice guy and pull back. And really all he wanted was the Donbass region anyway. Now, a couple other things have been funny. First, kind of playing into the second. I don't know if you saw this, but apparently there was some Russian colonel recently who was trying to urge his troops forward on a road. And I don't know if it was a tank or a BMP, decided they had enough and they ran him over. Did you see that?
I did not see that.
Oh yeah,
I don't know how I missed that, but
yeah, this happened a couple of days ago. He was like telling his men, "You need to go forward. We need to get through this." And the lead BMP or lead tank was like, "Fuck you," and then decided that they were going to run him over. And the guy had to he didn't die, but he had to get flown back to Russia to get his squishy injuries all taken care of. Jesus. Now, what that leads to is, it was all propaganda. The stuff over the last few years about this intense Russian military training and how much superior fighting skills they had, I think that myth has pretty much been blown over during the Ukraine war. But I still think in the end, if they really want it, especially since we're not willing to do anything, we're not even willing to let the Ukrainians have MiGs from Poland, which are older fighter aircraft. I think, unfortunately, Russia is going to eventually achieve what it wants to by simply through the weight of its numbers and its resources. Now, they wouldn't be able to hold on to a lot of Ukraine, but I think they could achieve military objectives eventually if they're willing to pay the price in manpower and the deaths. As a side note, they've already lost more soldiers during the invasion of Ukraine than the U.S. lost during 20 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yep. By a wide margin, by the way.
Yeah. But the Russians, they put out all the propaganda about how good they are. They're not. I mean, they still got a World War II style tactics of artillery and feed as many men as you can. It really shows anyone who knows anything about the United States military and how we train. Our tactics are decades ahead of them. I've watched the Russians fight in Ukraine. If Russia did not have nuclear weapons, we would whip them inside of a month. I mean, that one A-10 or an artillery crew with some copperheads would decimate those Russian tank columns, not only because they're on the roads, but they refuse to go cross country. That one of the things the two reasons they're not going cross country, they're trying to stick to the roads. One, they don't know how to fight in open terrain anymore, so they're trying to stick to the roads. And second, like a bunch of dumbasses, they decided to invade Ukraine at the end of February when everything is and now here in March, things are just starting to thaw out. So it's all muddy. You'd have thought if you really wanted to do true warfare, you would have invaded in, like, let's say the beginning to middle of May, when everything is all, everything's all dried out and you don't have to worry about getting all your stuff stuck in the mud. It's pretty comical to watch just how inept both the Russian leadership and the Russian soldiers are. It gives a little bit of buoyance to our own views of how Russia is not going to be able to take over the world. But it also, I believe, looks to the danger of, if Putin feels boxed in, given what he did in Grozny, given what he did in Syria, I believe he is fully capable, if he feels that it's near the end, because his entire regime is on the line. If he doesn't win this, he knows he's done. I believe that he would deploy a nuclear weapon. And I think that's obviously where everything is going to get really bad really fast. Now, would even China stick with him if he deploys a nuclear weapon? Probably not. But at that point, Putin's figuring, well, I'm going to go down anyway. I might as well, use everything in my arsenal.
Yeah, we've had that discussion. I think it would take a lot for him to deploy a nuclear weapon. I really, really do. One of the things that would help is if our administration or our leaders that are in charge right now would quit being pussies and saying, we don't want to fight. We don't want to fight. We just want to negotiate. I think what the Biden administration really wants, Russ, is not necessarily a victory for the Ukrainian people, but to capitulate so they don't have to engage Russia directly.
Yeah. I think Biden expected them to get overrun in 2 weeks.
I do too. I don't think, and there's no adults in charge in that administration. Even listening, I don't know if you have this feeling, and I'm not in the shoes of these officers in the armed forces who work, at the Joint Chiefs level, at the Pentagon and cabinet level. I don't even trust them. Milley's a joke. I think General Milley's a goddamn joke, and the fact that he hasn't resigned means he has no honor. I don't think I could work in this administration. I don't think I could. I mean, I have refused. A little bit about my career, but I have stabbed myself in my own butt cheeks a couple of times because I wasn't comfortable in a much lower level, much less corrupt, much less levels of exponential less effect in the world and the universe than this. Out of my own sense of ethics, duty, and morals, I have refused to do things and refused to work for certain people and in certain organizations. I've done it. I've walked out. And it probably didn't hurt. It probably didn't help my career in the line. There was no star at the end of the fucking, deal. Somebody somewhere is going to remember that and be on a board somewhere where you're trying to get promoted or you're trying to get into a school. I know that. I didn't sabotage my career in any way, but I was like, fuck no. Anybody listening to this podcast could hear that I'm not general material.
Well, maybe during wartime, but
yeah. Break glass
well during wartime. Don't do well during peacetime.
No, break glass in case of war. I would have. I would have gotten on fine as Patton's chief of staff in a former life. Hell yeah, but but yeah, no, and I don't trust anybody, and I hate that because there's, like I said, I brought up Madeleine Albright, who worked under the Clinton administration, and she was a bulldog, and I respected her. I didn't, but that was a different time when Democrats of that era would sound like far-right Republicans now.
Semi-sane, yeah.
Semi-sane, yeah. And, Bill Clinton was not... You can look at our incursion in Bosnia and McCaffrey, what a joke that I had to read his book for CGSC. Oh, my God. God, that guy was terrible. I'm the first Supreme Allied commander since, Eisenhower. I mean, remember him putting that in his book. And the fact that we had to buy the book when we went to CGSC, we had to line his pockets. I actually wrote a letter of protest to the commandant of CGSC.
Sure that went over well.
Guess what? Next couple of classes, I actually asked people, you have to read McCaffrey's biography? No, it's not on the list. I didn't give a fuck. He's like, this guy's a joke. Anyway, he wasn't a great military mind, but we had a far different outlook on the world, and our foreign policy was far different. It wasn't hawkish, but it certainly wasn't this, we don't let a fight bullshit that's going on with this regime.
Yeah, well, first of all, I do want to make one quick correction. The warship that was destroyed in Berdyansk, which is in the Sea of Azov, For those who fact checking me, I just want to make sure you're there.
I'm sure there's dozens of fact checking.
So anyway,
hey Forrest, fuck off. Quit fact checking us.
Anyway, Bill Clinton, while I thought he was a horrible person from a character standpoint, where his strength was and what Biden doesn't understand, Bill Clinton, especially after he got his ass kicked in 1994 with the first Republican takeover of Congress in over 40 years, decided to actually compromise and triangulate to the center. And Joe Biden, with a much narrower margin, thinks that he can ram everything through and he doesn't need to compromise. And that's the big difference between the two. Is Clinton knew where to cut his losses, where to focus his efforts. Joe Biden thinks he's going to be a transformational president. Now, Joe Biden is in the center of the Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party over the last 20 years has moved far left. And if you notice, Joe Biden's positions have tacked along with that. So he's remained in the center of the Democratic Party, but it's probably in the 10th percentile of far left ideology as opposed to where it was even 30 years ago.
Yeah, no, it's and that's why there's so much going on in this. And again, we're getting off target here a little bit, but when people like Bill Maher start sounding like Republicans, it's not because Bill Maher has become, and he hates the Republican Party for record. I've heard a couple of interviews lately with him. Well, he was on Ben Shapiro, which was kind of an interesting interview, and he was on Corolla last week, but he hasn't changed his viewpoint at all. Like he says, the Democratic Party has left me behind. They've went so far left that it makes me look like, I'm to the right, which I'm not. But I agree. I agree with that completely. You love or hate Bill Maher, or just kind of be slightly interested in him. I think the guy's got integrity with his viewpoints. I don't think he's changed a smack with his viewpoints. He's saying the same things he was on his HBO show 20 years ago, from what I can recall anyway. So I just think a lot of guys like him who are what they like to describe classically liberal have been left out in the cold by the direction that the Democratic Party has gone.
Well, it is fun to see some of Bill Maher's red pill moments, but at the same time, there's 2 points I want to make about Bill Maher. First of all, it's hard to give him a pass given that he helped create the environment we're in right now. I mean, his stuff from 20 years ago laid the foundation of the hatred we are currently experiencing. And so for him to suddenly be like, oh my goodness, I never knew it would get this bad. Dude, you were one of the reasons it got this bad. The second thing, I just watched. I don't
think he would accept responsibility for that at all.
No, of course he wouldn't. I think the second thing is I just watched an interview with him recently where he was back to the same old Bill Maher talking about this Supreme Court nominee, Ketanji Brown, and saying that, Republicans treating her the way it is was racist. And, trying to act as if,
my God.
Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, excuse me. I want to make sure that I get the name right.
Yeah.
But
out of respect, absolutely.
Yeah, but was saying, she's being treated like this because she's a black woman. The Republicans would never go for her on the court because of her skin color. I'm like, dude, the Republicans weren't the ones that filibustered Janice Rogers Brown for the appellate court, which would have set her up for, a seat on the Supreme Court one day. Janice Rogers Brown is a minority. She's an African-American woman who is a very hard right conservative. It's not the nominee that I take issue with. It's the nominee's views and why I think she'd be bad on the court. But again, Bill Maher went back to the same old playbook just yesterday. So while it's amusing to watch some of his, oh my goodness, how did this happen moments? I heard him on the Ben Shapiro show, and he said, I could never be with Republicans because of climate change.
And the fact that they are going to destroy democracy.
Yeah.
Based on this bullshit, based on the bullshit election,
based on the narratives and everything else.
That's just fucking stupid. That's just fucking stupid.
Yeah. So while it's fun to watch some of his stuff every once in a while, I can't be a Bill Maher fan because he won't take responsibility for how he laid this foundation, and he too easily falls back into the old tropes that he's relied on for decades.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was a good segue, by the way, to talk about the SCOTUS hearings with Judge Jackson going through the confirmation hearings.
Oh, professional does it. A professional segues like that.
Yeah, that was good. Went from Bill Maher to that because that's what we want to talk about next. I want to get into this a little bit because you raised an interesting point. I don't think she listens to the pod, and I'm definitely not going to name her, but old friend of mine, a lovely human being and lady that I used to work for, She's a black female, educated, very, very smart, and I like her a lot. She tends, and we respect each other. She knew. I mean, when we met, we clashed like fuck because I came across as this, bull in the china shop, pound juggernaut.
Not you.
Yeah, educated. Like I like to say, I'm just a redneck with a paint job and a few books in my library, really. And she was put in a job that I thought she didn't deserve, and so we clashed for quite some time, and then we finally kind of just got sick of clashing and had it out and sat down and had a conversation, and it changed everything, and we became. It really wasn't about anything other than personalities, okay? And I think we both saw each other through a filter that we shouldn't have. I think we both made mistakes there, and it rubbed each other the wrong way. But once we kind of got to know each other as people, the respect and the I will say mutual admiration, and for 25 years now we've been friends and supported each other. We definitely share different views on life, different views on race, different views on politics. But lovely woman with a lovely family. I did see she posted something recently. It had a picture of Judge Jackson, and it said something to the effect of, here we go again, an overqualified woman having to explain herself to underqualified la 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 la. And I'm sitting there going, one of the biggest back and forth she got into was Senator Ted Cruz, and I have a lot of admiration for Ted Cruz. I don't think you do as much as I do. I really like Ted Cruz, and I think he would.
I like some of Ted Cruz. Unfortunately, and maybe this is just the way that he presents himself. A lot of times, he does come across as a used car salesman. He's very intelligent. I think
he has some challenges. He does.
Real quick, I think the biggest problem with Ted Cruz is self-inflicted. And what I mean by that is he is usually the smartest person in the room. Unfortunately, he also knows he's usually the smartest person in the room.
He can come across that way. And that's absolutely true. He's a brilliant constitutional lawyer. For those of you that don't know, he has argued successful cases in front of the Supreme Court itself. There was a thought that Trump was actually going to offer him the Supreme Court nomination when Trump first came into office. That there was a thought that was going to happen. He actually would be pretty goddamn qualified, to be honest with you. Hasn't sat on the bench, like Judge Jackson to the extent or anything like that. But
also not that's not an enumerated qualification either.
It is not at all. He is a brilliant constitutionalist, and he's a libertarian at heart. He's one of the few actual libertarians in the entire House and Senate, Rand Paul being another one off the top of my head that I can think of. He's very libertarian in his viewpoints. And he had it out with Judge Jackson. And, of course, everybody's calling him an angry racist because he asks some very, very poignant questions about her, some of the decisions she made from the bench. And in particular, and we'll get into the woman thing briefly because I know everybody's heard that, but in particular, her soft on crime stance in a couple of cases, which I thought she really needs to answer these questions. She really does, because some of the things she said are concerning. I wasn't in the courtroom. I don't know the whole picture. I know as well as anybody you're ever going to talk to how fucking bad the legal system can be when not looked at from the big picture and all of that. I don't know, Ted Cruz, and then of course, Kentucky guy. I'm sorry,
Rand Paul.
Yeah, and God, who else was? Anyway,
and Josh Hawley was on her as well, and so was Tom Cotton.
Tom Cotton, right? And
Marshall Blackburn.
Tom Cotton was called a slave master, by the way, by Ron Perlman on Twitter. So
Ron Perlman is a douche.
He is. I wish he just would explode right now and no longer exist.
He thinks he's a badass because he's played badass guys in movie. Look, Ron Perlman, you are a joke. You would not last 5 seconds in a real fight. Shut up.
He's a big, ugly guy who plays a biker in Hellboy and thinks yeah. Russ, you would shred him in 15 seconds, and it might take me 12. So anyway, not too bad. But anyway, yeah, and it's kind of funny because what I wanted to say to my old friend, seeing that, because it was obviously kind of geared towards, she's a female, so she's getting treated badly, and on top of it, the intersectionality of being a black female makes sense.
Excuse me.
I really wanted to say, did you put out the same meme for Amy Coney Barrett about being an overqualified woman having to put up with, and oh my God, the shit that Amy Coney Barrett had to put up with? Did you defend your fellow woman? But wait a minute. Here's the thing, guys. None of that matters because there's no such thing as a woman, and the Supreme Court nominee couldn't even define what a fucking woman was. So this is the beauty of the left ideology, that it eats itself. It starts with a false premise and gets to a false conclusion, and that conclusion actually eats the premises away. Look at anything from a logical standpoint, and that's the entire philosophy of the left. It eats itself. So you say that, well, she's getting treated this way because she's a woman. Well, who knows she's a woman? She can't even define woman. Okay, now I'm being specious here a little bit, because of course she's a woman, and according to her and a lot of the pundits out there, she's a person of faith, and I don't think she's a bad person. I don't think she's the worst nominee they could have come up with. But there are some serious concerns about this person. And like, I can't remember who the senator was who was grilling her about the definition of woman. I can't remember who the lady was.
I believe
who was that?
I believe it was Josh Hawley, but I'm not.
No, it was a lady. It was a blonde lady, and I can't.
Oh, was it Marsha Blackburn?
Yes, it was. Thank you. You're my encyclopedia when I forget this kind of shit. I don't have any notes in front of me at all, so this is all riffing, baby. This is how Russ and I do a wrap off. We just have this podcast and we just go back and forth.
It helps that
it's our educated white boy version.
Center.
This is the patriarchy version of a wrap off right here. Formula Guy versus Chaos Man, and but it was just so ridiculous. I'm not a biologist, and of course you've seen that I put a couple of memes up over the Two Grumpy Bastards Facebook page, shameless plug, of how ridiculous that logic is. I'm not a biologist. So you're an incredibly educated, intelligent human being, and you can't tell me what a woman is.
Yeah, look, I'm not a veterinarian, but I know what a dog is.
We could meme this to death. We could make analogies all day about this. The bottom line is, it was fucking stupid. It was fucking stupid. Now, what would have been smart if she had come up with some type of corollary to that, or a parry to that, and say, do you mean woman in the context of the legal sense? What a woman is, if I'm trying a case, or if I'm judging a case, and there's a case that comes before me, and we have to judicially decide what a woman is, age-wise, or she could have played that.
That would not have played to the left-wing base.
It wouldn't have. But it just, even your Supreme Court justice nominee, and she obviously has been making a lot of decisions, and her philosophy is very much left of center. Of course, it's going to be, because that's the administration. It's not like the last two Supreme Court justices that were nominated and put into the Supreme Court by Donald Trump didn't have a right-leaning philosophy. Of course they did. That's the way it works. I don't so much have a problem with that as when you have somebody that is that obviously already dialed into woke culture that they're worried about even defining what a woman is. I can't define that in this context. What the fuck you mean? What fucking context is there? You mean XX chromosome? You mean reproductive parts? You mean high estrogen? Low testosterone? What else do you mean? Characteristics of caregiving and some other things, for the most part, stereotypically? I mean, fuck off. Just fuck off with that.
Look, let's be frank about a couple of things. First of all, Judge Jackson was nominated to the court. Excuse me, I'm having a little bit of thing with my throat today.
Don't you have that cough button that I sent you on your microphone?
Yeah, no. So Judge Jackson was nominated to the Supreme Court specifically because she was a black woman. That's not me saying it. That was Joe Biden saying it. Joe Biden promised Jim Clyburn in the primaries that if you back me, I will nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court. And then he said it, which was one of the dumbest things that he said it publicly. If he had made a private promise to Representative Clyburn and then just done it, but hadn't made such a show about I'm nominating her because she's a black woman, it would have been more difficult to lay some of the stuff at her feet. But now there's always going to be an asterisk by that. People are going to wonder, okay, was she really qualified, or was it just that, it's only because she was a black woman? And that undermines and demeans her accomplishments that she has spent years, earning, because now people are going to say, well, you didn't really earn it. You got there because Joe Biden said he needed an African-American woman on the court. And again, he's been very open about him saying that. Now, Judge Jackson has been, she's been through law school. She's done a lot of stuff on the bench. A lot of the stuff I don't agree with. Right. In terms of her decisions. but it is kind of sad that it undermined her career and her accomplishments for Joe Biden to reduce her to that. Now, on the hearings, I wish the Republicans would actually be more vicious about stuff, and here's why. Well, first of all, let me talk about why they won't. They won't be vicious for two reasons. A, because she is a black woman and they're afraid of being called racists. And B, because I hope I said A to start with.
You said X actually to start with.
Anyway, first, because she is a black woman, and second, because the Republicans are basically a bunch of pussies. They just are. But after the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, the Republicans should have gone scorched earth. They absolutely should go scorched earth. Any nominee, no matter who it is a pedophile necrophiliac who likes to hump horses and is burning babies in the street. I mean, what they did to Brett Kavanaugh in 2018 was absolutely inexcusable in my mind. But Republicans, for some reason, will not fight back. I understand that they want to see themselves as above it all. But I promise you, the next time, if you've seen even a modicum of the coverage about when Justice Clarence Thomas had to go into the hospital, you get a whole bunch of lefties that are like, man, I hope he dies so we can nominate someone else to his seat too. They're not willing to be nice or classy about any of this. So I see no reason why we should play in the sandbox by ourselves.
Yep.
It's time to start excoriating folks, but unfortunately they won't do it because they do want to be seen as above it. Now, their questions were very pointed. But I mean, it's gonna be meaningless in the end. Look, she's gonna get confirmed, probably with 50 votes and a tiebreak by the vice president. And it's also not going to change the ideological makeup of the court because she's replacing Justice Breyer. It's going to still be a 6-3 majority. I don't think that excuses anything because she's going to be on the court for decades. She's young enough for that. I can't recall her exact age, but I believe it's like 45, 46.
Yeah, I don't know. She certainly looks very young, and I always get mad
51.
at my. Okay, 51. Yeah, she looks younger. She looks very healthy,
but she could be on the court for 30 years. And
yeah, easily.
It's become a tribalism issue, and it first became tribal in the 80s with Robert Bork.
Right.
Borking someone has become a term, and then it's Robert Bork, and then Clarence Thomas, and then Brett Kavanaugh. If you notice all these nominees that get just raked over the coals, they're all Republicans because Republicans were not willing to do the same thing to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, to Stephen Breyer, to Elena Kagan, to Sonia Sotomayor. They just weren't willing to play as hard on this. Nominations were almost, if they weren't flat out rejected, they were usually like near unanimous up until Robert Bork.
Right.
I think, Judge Jackson, if she had been nominated by Donald Trump, I think it would be the exact reverse. I think Republicans would be pumping her up and Democrats would be coming down on her just because we're that tribal. But I think it should be the solemn duty of all the senators to actually evaluate her qualifications and her legal outlook, and then make the decision if they want her on the bench. I don't believe in deference to the president on this. I believe that makes Congress a secondary branch of government as opposed to a co-equal branch of government. Congress has a responsibility, and they don't want to exercise it because they want to defer to the president should get his picks. Okay, first of all, I don't necessarily agree with that. There are checks and balances in the Constitution for a reason. And since being on the Supreme Court is going to be a decades-long thing, let's say she only has let's say she still wants to retire at the age of 77 for some reason, doesn't want to go into her 80s. That's still, she'll have 25, 26 years on the court. That's a long time to make a very large impact on the jurisprudence of the United States, especially given that everyone now views the Supreme Court as the only true arbiter of law in the United States. It has become almost judicial supremacy as opposed to the concept of it was supposed to be checked by the executive and the legislative.
Yeah, that's a lot. I'm probably going to leave most of that alone. What I will say is we could do another 2 hours on this because I have a lot of thoughts about jurisprudence and the legal system and the current state of the legal system in this country. The amount of cases. I read something within the last year, and the numbers are not with me right now. I apologize. I didn't think to look this up. Okay, so you go to the when anything goes from, say, a district court to an appellate court. or and then gets elevated from there. Normally, the amount of decisions that are overturned in history of the court system in the United States of America are pretty slim. There has been in the last 20 years, and I remember they used 20 years, something like a 20-fold increase in decisions being overturned from one court to the next level. That is indicative of just one thing and one thing only: politics. That judges that are supposed to be impartial, that aren't, judges that are elected don't run as a party member. They run as an independent. There is no party when judges get elected. Appointed, of course, when judges get appointed to some of the higher courts by either the president or whatever. Of course, there's going to be some political things, but what that's told me is that the entire legal system now, all the way up to the Supreme Court, is just seeded with nothing but political fucking landmines.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's changed. That's really changed. I think at one point in the United States, with some serious issues aside, well, you can't put them aside, but yeah, there have been some serious issues with, how different races were treated in the courts, and of course, if you're poor, you're still fucked. You're still fucked either in the criminal or civil courts. I have a friend that's going through a really ugly civil case right now, who's not wealthy, who can't afford great lawyers and stuff like that, and he's getting shellacked. He's getting shellacked by a very bad person that he was married to for a few years. Absolutely shellacked. And so you see stuff like that because he can't afford the great lawyer that's going to come in there and kick ass and take names. But I think there was a lot more confidence. When I was a kid, I remember 8th grade, I think, we did this. We had to write an essay on who we wanted to be when we grew up. And this is you're going to laugh at this. Of course, I wanted to be an astronaut. That was what I wanted to be. I wanted to be, as I say, Prime Minister of Mars. I really thought I was going to be Prime Minister of Mars.
That's pretty awesome.
You
could almost be like Stacey Abrams, President of the United Earth.
Yes, exactly. Fuck that. Don't get me started on that. But the second thing was I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice because I loved the Constitution, the idea of the United States and how it worked, and how when I learned how the judicial and the executive and the legislative branches, the checks and balances, that seemed like a really fucking great idea to me. And I thought, I think the best thing you could be in the world, other than screw being a president because you're a politician, is a Supreme Court justice. I don't see it that way anymore, bro. I'm not saying there's, Clarence Thomas, in my mind, is one of the greatest Supreme Court justices in history. He really is, as far as his consistency and some of his some of the writings he's done on decisions and stuff. Him
like that. Him and Scalia would be close.
Yep. I really do, and I mean the entire history of the Supreme Court. He sticks out, in my mind. But yeah, I think we've lost confidence. You're right. I'm uncomfortable with Supreme Court hearings being about stuff. I don't think anything that the Republicans asked her was out of line with trying to get to know the kind of judge she is, if you know what I'm saying.
Very mild. I mean, very intense, but very mild given some of the past.
Lindsey Graham was a little bit pugnacious, I will admit, but Lindsey Graham is one of the few pugnacious people in the entire legislative branch of the United States as a Republican, like you said.
Because he's had his eyes open. He used to be one of these go along to get along guys.
He was.
During the Trump administration, he saw what it was like, and Lindsey Graham 2.0 has been a sight to behold.
It really is kind of fun. And I would say, I think Ted Cruz has taken 2 steps up that since being called Lying Ted by Trump in the the election and all that kind of
That's one of the reasons, just real quick, one of the reasons why Trump will clear the field is because, look, Trump takes those insults and he doesn't see anything about them. He understands that's part of the campaign, but it ends up branding people. And what he would do to a Ron DeSantis or a Glenn Youngkin is he would just, they may still win the nomination, but he would destroy their chances in the general.
Just a quick aside with that. I don't know if you ever listened to Scott Adams' podcast.
No, I have not.
Of Dilbert fame.
I know who he is, and I've read some of his stuff, but I have not listened to his podcast.
I don't listen to all his podcasts because he's got, his style is not one that I like to listen to every day. Unlike a Carolla or a Shapiro or a Dave Rubin, I like their style, so I try to catch them at least every day. Matt Walsh, those kind of guys. Even my people who compare me to Steven Crowder, I can't listen to him every day either because it's too much. It's like being sandblasted.
Hey, real quick, stay on target moment. But did you see Steven Crowder and his presentation to the Fat Acceptance Conference?
I did.
Google it, folks. It's awesome. Anyway,
I love Steven Crowder. He's so talented and funny. But Scott Adams had some really good series of why Trump was so effective. And he talked about that, how he would take these catchphrases and beat them into people's heads. Lion Ted, what was it? Crazy Hillary?
Crooked Hillary, Lion Ted.
What was the Jeb Bush? It was Sleepy Jed.
Yeah. Low energy Jeb or something like that.
Whatever.
Sleepy Joe for Joe Biden.
Sleepy Joe. And yeah, I mean, it's incredibly psychologically effective to do that. Anyway, it comes from his marketing and his entrepreneur background. I mean, the guy, that's why he did it. Go ahead. We'll wrap up this talk about the SCOTUS. We'll move into a couple of fun things before we sign off for this pod. So any other thoughts?
No, it is kind of disheartening how important in our political landscape the Supreme Court has become. I don't think the founding fathers saw it becoming quite like this. It was almost hey, we kind of need a Supreme Court. And while I actually do agree with the doctrine of judicial review, that was not necessarily granted in the Constitution to the Supreme Court. It was just kind of made up during Marbury versus Madison. But no one will tell the Supreme Court to go take a flying leap. The only person I ever knew who did it, and I didn't know him personally, obviously, was Andrew Jackson. I don't remember the ruling, but the Supreme Court made some ruling, and Jackson's like, they made the ruling, let him come enforce it.
Yeah, I can't remember what that was either. But, you're not allowed to speak Andrew Jackson anymore in this country.
That's true.
He's been canceled. So, not that he ever accomplished anything for the United States in a contextual man of his time. Well, Russ, let's
real quick. It was John Marshall made his decision. Now let him enforce it. It was during a case of revolving around Georgia's attempt to apply state lands to the local Cherokee. That's anyway, right. I just had to get a nerd moment in there for a second. That's
right. That's kind of funny because I'd forgotten about that until you brought it up, and I remember studying him in detail and reading his autobiography. That'd be interesting.
Autobiography, pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, he wrote it from the grave. But his biography, and I remember that now that you say that, and I thought then, any president really has the power to fucking say that and do that to a very large extent. It's like, okay, you're telling us to do this, but what if the Congress refused to enforce it? What if the executive branch refused? Supreme Court really
sure.
So I guess the point of that is Supreme Court doesn't have any true power. They basically make recommendations. They rule they make rulings, but that the enforcement of those rulings have to come from the executive and the legislative branch.
Yep.
So that's part of the checks and balances, which is a good thing. But it also tells you the august nature that we used to have. I mean, the closest thing to God on planet Earth is a football coach and a fucking judge. I mean, they are royalty. They are in America, I should say. They are royalty, and judges especially, I think, have a little bit too much power, in my opinion.
Well, they're on the bench too long. Lifetime appointments is something I don't agree with.
We talked about that before. I think last year, something about term limits for Supreme Court justices, and I would not be opposed to that.
I would like to see a 15 to 18 year maximum on a judicial appointment.
I don't know what that number is, but I'm surprised I get why they did it. And it's probably something we shouldn't fuck with, because then they're going to start, doing loading the Supreme Court and doing some other changes and shit like that. And we don't want that to happen. Nine is what you should have, folks. 9. Keep it at 9. It works. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg agreed with that, by the way.
Stephen Breyer, but you notice Judge Jackson would not answer that question.
I noticed that she would not answer that question about loading the Supreme Court. She didn't answer anything, and that's one of the sad things about the way those hearings go these days too. Is that they go to a murder board and they're saying just dodge every question that has to do with how you would rule on something.
Well, they all learned from Judge Bork. Bork tried to answer those questions, and you saw what happened. They used it against him, and so ever since they've all been like, "Well, I'd have to see the specifics of the case. I can't answer that right now."
Right. And for those of you that don't know Judge Bork, it's worth Googling at least and reading a little bit about what happened during those hearings, because it's a travesty and it changed the face of the Supreme Court and how we do things in this country forever. It did. Yep. It did. Profound effect. All right, Russ, let's talk about a couple of fun things. I hope you got your lists ready.
Of course.
Okay. Are we going to talk about Disneyland, or are we going to... We'll skip that one. We're already an hour and a half into this thing, or hour and 20 minutes.
We could talk your favorite girly topic of rom-coms.
Let's talk rom-coms. And by the way, I did put this... that's a Disneyland Castle behind me, because I thought we were going to talk Disneyland, but
we can still do that.
Okay, let's spend 3 to 5 minutes talking about it. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's the two main parks in the United States, Disneyland and Disney World. And the Disney, I don't know if this is a fun part of the topic, but Disney has decided to start injecting itself further and further into politics because providing wholesome content is just not enough, and they haven't been providing wholesome content recently. So they originally, Bob Chapek, the chairman of Disney, decided to stay out of the Florida legislative controversy over the parental consent bill for the sexual indoctrination of children that apparently a lot of folks on the left want to do in K through 3. And then about 200 of his Disney employees got upset and wrote a big long letter to Chapek about this. And a couple dozen of them, if you've seen the pictures, it's nowhere near the whole company or even a half or even a tenth or even 5%. It's like a couple dozen people walked out of Disneyland to protest the bill in Florida. The folks at Pixar have decided to make it so that I will not take my children to see the movie Lightyear because they re-implemented a lesbian kiss scene in Lightyear. And look, I don't have anything against it. However, I do have it against you trying to force it on my children. So I don't feel the movie is any longer appropriate for my kids. Maybe it's something that they want to watch when they get older. Maybe it's something I might be interested in watching without my children, but it's not something I'm interested in watching with my children any longer. And Disney has decided that they want to be the woke enforcement arm of entertainment. They're now trying to even weigh into the Texas bill that says it's abuse if you want to mutilate your children and cut off their genitals before they're 18 years old. So I don't know what Disney thinks it's going to do. Why Chapek couldn't just simply tell, a couple hundred employees out of a company that employs tens of thousands, hey, you don't get to decide our political stances, go get bent. Because Disney World is not going to take itself out of Florida. They're not going to spend that money. They make too much money in Orlando. So I don't know exactly what Chapek was concerned about. But I have less and less grown attached to Disney over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's sad to me because I really do like a lot of their content, especially since they've taken over all the Marvel, and Star Wars stuff. And
they know they've got you because of that kind of stuff.
Right. And unfortunately, when Mandalorian season 3 comes out, I'm going to fucking watch it because it's really good. I'm going to watch it. I am. I wish I had the balls to cut off my Disney Plus subscription right now, and maybe I will. Maybe this will get so out of hand that I will.
It's a matter of how bad it gets, really.
Well, and you mentioned in your notes that you wanted to talk about this and that we're giving money to people that hate us. And I agree with that. I'm kind of ethically torn now that Disney's always, not always, I mean, certainly not in Walt Disney's days.
No, definitely not.
Quite the opposite politics in those days, to say the least. But now they've been skewing left for quite some time. They censored a lot of their programs. Some of them for good reasons. I don't think Song of the South should ever needs to be played. I mean, you should be able to have access to it, but I get them going, ooh, this one's problematic. I get that.
I think you and I probably disagree there. I grew up, when I was growing up, I watched Song of the South. It's not anything I ever associated with racial overtones. And I think them taking it away took away a part of my childhood. Maybe I'd feel differently if I rewatched it today. But I still remember the Tales of Brer Rabbit, everything about it. So I don't necessarily agree on the same level that you do.
Yeah, that's cool. I get where you're coming from. I did, yeah. Me, I kind of get centered on stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, maybe. But I always go back to that libertarian slippery slope argument too, where and we've seen it. The slippery slope doesn't just exist; it's a fucking water slide.
Oh now, yeah, I used to laugh at people about that. Now I'm like, well, you guys were prescient.
100% right. Which I used to think people like that were conspiracy theorists, and come on, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with that? And I get it. And then we wake up in a society today where we don't even recognize it as the country that we grew up in. So
yeah, pretty much.
That happens too. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my coonhound. I have no idea what he's doing right now. All right.
This is some good podcasting.
Could you hold on until I'm done with my podcast here, buddy? All right, thank you. But anyway, and there's been DeSantis has basically told Florida or Disneyland or Disney World, and I guess they sat down and had a meeting and didn't come out of it with any type of compromise. And DeSantis basically said, go get fucked.
I don't know if you heard, Disney tried to originally say we had a good meeting. He's going to address our concerns, and DeSantis came out and said, that's not true. We had no meeting in person. I talked to you on the phone, and I'm not doing dick.
I did. I did. Yeah, no, I love DeSantis. I'm telling you. But makes me want to move to Florida, just like everybody else.
I'm close. I'm close in Tennessee.
Yep. Yeah, you are. But yeah, I think it's the companies that get. By the way, this is along the same veins. It's not really an aside. Have you seen? I'm sorry. The what's he call himself? The God King of. Jeremy Boring.
Oh yeah, the Harry's Razors.
Jerry's Razors in response to Harry's Razors, who decided that they're not going to be a sponsor of Ben Shapiro's outfit anymore.
That happened about a year ago when Michael Knowles made the incredibly controversial statement that men were men and women were women, and you could not, transition yourself in between the two.
Yeah, that right. And so they quit sponsorship, and instead of going, "Oh, okay, see ya." And they publicized why, by the way. That was the big mistake. If Harry's really felt, which is really bizarre to me, that you have the most masculine thing other than a knife and a gun that you can sell on the market, and you're that big of a pussy when it comes to politics. It astonishes me how some of this stuff worked. But anyway, for those of you who don't know, Jeremy Boring, they decided to come out with their own razor company called. And have you seen the ad, by the way, where he takes
where Jeremy Boring at the end takes a flamethrower to Harry's Razors? I have seen it.
It's wonderful. And so I admit there's a Harry's Razor sitting on my bathroom stoop in there, and I'm gonna go ahead and buy some Jerry's Razors and get rid of them. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, well, there needed to be an alternative ever since Gillette came out and started talking about toxic masculinity.
Oh my God, yes, I wouldn't touch a Gillette product if it had beer flavored nipples. I wouldn't do it, man. I wouldn't do it. But anyway, so that happened. But to tie this story up, there was a bit of a backlash among some of the Disney employees who, I think a little bit tongue in cheek, but as a good pushback, said we are people who are not. Basically, we don't carry around a leftist agenda, and our politics are different than what's being expressed, and we no longer feel safe in the workplace.
Yeah, it was like I think it was a couple hundred folks wrote an open letter, and it got obviously leaked intentionally to the right wing media that they publicized and said, "Hey, look, not everyone who works here is a communist progressive, and unfortunately, we can't even answer internal surveys because we think they're going to be used against us."
Yep, and so they used a little bit of the left medicine against that company and said there was something about we don't feel safe or protected in the workplace, la la la, and I gotta admit I don't know a whole lot of people that are right of center that are that big of wusses that actually feel that way about being unsafe. But using the same language I think is very effective. Actually, if it had been me, I'm like, fuck you,
Yeah, you lost your job real fast, though.
I lost my job real fast, but
just real quick,
pussies. Yeah.
Let me say real quick. For everyone says, "Well, you should be willing to lose your job." Look. I get the sentiment behind that, but let's be realistic. It's real easy to say that when you're not the one quitting and you're not the one that has to explain to your children why they have to go to bed hungry. So sometimes you can look around for other jobs, but sometimes, especially when you're in that moment, you got to make do with what you got. That's one of the reasons why these woke politics at these companies are so concerning.
I would tell people you got to maintain. It's okay to look for another job. I definitely would be looking for another job. I think that's reasonable. And the nice thing is that there is a lot. We're in a cusp of a big change right now, where there are a lot of as a backlash to this left migration in this country and business and entertainment. It is really creating this whole economy of different companies coming out to give people alternatives. If you listen to
bifurcating the economy.
It is. If you listen to Matt Walsh's show, I don't all the time, and he is, like I always say, he's much further right than I am, much further right. Some of his views actually annoy the piss out of me, and I get pissed listening to him. I'm like, come on, dude, what the fuck? But I really respect the fact the guy has integrity. He takes a stand. He absolutely is 100% behind. But if you ever listen to his show, all of his ads are really companies that give you a product to replace woke companies. Whether it's, he actually, for instance, there's a cell company who donates like 20% of their funds to pro-life charities. And he pimps that on his show. For instance, they are out there. It takes a little research for people who don't want to give their money to the leftist overlords. And with the rise of things like Rumble and Locals and some of these other media platforms that are on the rise, there's a lot of hope out there. Ben Shapiro's company, Making Movies.
Yep.
You know, they contracted with Adam Carolla to do some exclusive comedy bits, stuff like that. They're really going after it. And what was the one thing that Shapiro announced the other day about that? They're coming out with a new media product. They're publishing books now.
Oh yeah, they are. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're book publishers. So they're creating this. They're going to create this whole, to cater to over half the country that really wants that alternative.
Well, and the thing, one of the reasons that the left has really woken up the right on this kind of stuff, because the right, for the most part, just wants to be left alone, and they will. The reason why a lot of these companies go progressively woke is because the left will scream at them if they don't, but they know the right is pretty much still going to buy their products. So they figure they can piss off the right with impunity. Well, until there's an alternative offered, they'll keep doing that. But once they start losing like lots of money, maybe it'll drive people back into political neutrality. And that's all I ask. I don't necessarily need a right-wing point of view. I would just like you to be politically neutral so that I don't have this shit shoved down my throat every 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Have the politics you want. Remember the days, Russ, when you had no idea the politics of the company you bought stuff from or the teachers or anything?
Yep, like when Wendy's, who's the beef, where's the beef?
Yeah,
I had no idea.
It wouldn't even occur to me to know what the politics were of the company I was buying something from. Wouldn't even occur to me because they didn't talk about it. But I'm sure internally they gave to the candidates they gave to, but they didn't go out there and start making waves. It's fucking crazy. All right. Our last segment here, we're going to do a couple of fun things. So hopefully you got your list, Russ. I got a bunch, actually, but we're going to have to go through all of them. So you want me to start?
Yeah, why don't you start? Because I've got 6 on my list.
Okay. I got a few more, but that's okay. I can knock a couple of these off. So what we're doing here, since we've gotten so much pushback on our hatred of romantic comedies, my particular hatred may be more than yours.
Yeah, probably.
Especially The Notebook.
Who has pushed back on you?
I've just gotten a couple of mentions from folks that listen to the podcast, either via Facebook Messenger. We got the one letter from the fan in California, Sleepless in California, that was taking a shot at us for not liking The Notebook, if you remember, and then we destroyed our argument in the last podcast. So some of these may not sound like rom-coms, and that's probably why I like them, but there is a rom-com element to these. So I'll start off with one that's a pure rom-com. You can't deny it. It's the movie Serendipity. Are you familiar with that one?
Never saw it.
John Cusack, Kate Beckinsale, John Corbett. So they meet by accident in New York, but she's like engaged to this. What's funny about it is John Cusack is always good. He's always good in those kind of roles. And Kate Beckinsale, she's goddess. But her boyfriend...
Yeah. I think I first noticed Kate Beckinsale during the Underworld movies.
God. Yeah. So anyway, the funniest part of that is they meet by accident, and you can tell they're star-crossed lovers, but he's engaged to somebody and she's engaged to this guy. The funny part is the guy she's engaged to is that guy, I think his name is John Corbett. He used to be on, what was that show about Alaska that they filmed in Washington State?
Northern Exposure.
Northern Exposure. He was the long-haired guy who was the DJ.
Okay.
And he's like made a kind of a second. I hated him. I always thought he was a bad actor, and marshmallow dude, limp-wristed marshmallow. Wearing lots of bracelets. Always that guy smelled like patchouli, motherfucker. He plays a character of kind of his self that he is like he's a world famous pan flute player, and that's what he does for a living.
Wow.
And he tries to make the pan flute like sexy, and like he does these videos, and he's a dork. And then so of course John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale end up trying to find each other, and there's all this stuff. It's actually just a really well crafted, funny movie, and the dialogue's kind of witty. I actually really like Serendipity. For those of you tough guys that are out there that are sucked into doing date nights with your wives and stuff, watching a rom-com, I recommend it. You'll actually enjoy it.
I have not heard. I've heard of the movie. I just have not ever watched it.
I think you and Sherry would enjoy it. I do.
Okay. Do you want me to go?
Yes, please.
Okay. Some people may not think of this as a rom-com, but it is Coming to America.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
Sorry, I had to hit the cough button for a second. Coming to America is it's not a full-on sappy love fest, but it's got the elements. One of the funniest parts of the movie is when Eddie Murphy is in the bath and the royal women come up. The woman comes up out of the water and is like, "The royal penis is clean, Your Highness." That had me in stitches.
Yes.
Plus with Arsenio Hall, great movie. the sequel was a joke.
The sequel was terrible, but the original was a piece of gold. It was.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed Coming to America. I think I saw it when I was 15. It's great. People may not think of it as a rom-com, but it is.
It is. No, I agree. And I have a couple on here that people go, that's not a rom-com. But I think they are. A movie that I think is one of the funnier movies I've seen in the last, I don't know, however many years, because I think the funniest comedian alive was the main character was Bridesmaids. And that's
another one I've never seen.
With Melissa McCarthy and her and Rose Byrne, and the cast is fantastic. The movie is fucking hilarious. I mean, the whole thing. There's a scene where they eat bad sushi, and they all get the gals are out because it's one of the best friends' weddings, and this is the group. And Kristen Wiig, of course, from Saturday Night Live fame.
I like her.
Oh, she's the funniest woman on planet Earth.
Absolutely,
so talented. She's so talented that it makes her incredibly attractive. I mean, she's kind of medium looks, but she's so funny and brilliant that I'm like, my God, it just makes her more attractive that she's that funny. But Bridesmaids, there's a scene where they all eat bad sushi, they get food poisoning, and they all run into a bathroom in a restaurant, and there's not enough toilet seats. And so Melissa McCarthy jumps up, and she's going in the sink, and everybody, some of them are going in the alley. I mean, it's kind of like The Hangover for chicks, but there's a really cute kind of a rom-com aspect to it. I had the names at the top of my head, so I didn't even write it down. The main guy from... what's his name? I just watched a movie with him in it last night. Well, there's John Hamm is like her.
I think I have a man crush on John Hamm.
Oh God, yeah, it's hard not to. That's her like fuck buddy. But then she runs into this cop, and it's the Irish comedian and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Anyway, a really good little backstory with her being this selfish, self-centered person, and she kind of the character development is really good with her. And Kristen Wiig is just so damn talented that any scene she's in is just funny. There's a fantastic scene with Melissa McCarthy on a plane hitting on the guy that she thinks is the sky marshal, and she's a big gal and she's very over the top, and I like Melissa McCarthy. I think she's hilarious. Any movie she's in, I'll at least give it a shot. So recommend Bridesmaids. It's definitely not a movie to watch if your children are up, Russ, but I think you and Sherry would enjoy that one.
All right. Well, another one that might not be thought of as a rom-com, but I think every guy has to watch this movie is Something About Mary.
I almost put that down. Yeah, it's fantastic.
The Franks and Beans comment itself was just gold. Bringing in Brett Favre at the end.
David in that small role, he's so fucking funny.
Yeah.
I can't tell if it's the Franks or the Beans.
When she kept talking about her ex-boyfriend Brett, and it turned out to be Brett Favre.
Yeah, Favre.
Yeah, Ben Stiller. That was part of his comedic best, as far as I'm concerned.
One of his best, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Cameron Diaz using the substance as a hair gel. Again, iconic. I don't know that doesn't put me in the sappy rom-com camp, because I think that's just a classic.
Yeah, but it's a rom-com. I would agree with you there. I got one along the same lines that people would go, that's not a rom-com. Groundhog Day.
I've heard that's a rom-com. I see the rom-com elements, but yeah, it's a classic comedy.
It's a classic comedy. And there's another one on my list that actually uses the formula from Groundhog Day that you probably haven't seen, but I really highly recommend. Groundhog Day, with he's doing everything he can because he's in love with this woman, and he keeps going through this trying to improve himself to try to get out of this one day so that he can be with her to shape himself into being a better man that she would be attracted to. So that's definitely rom-com-esque.
Yeah, the only issue I would take with the movie was that Harold Ramis, the director, cut a scene that he shouldn't have cut at the very beginning, where one of Bill Murray's exes was apparently doing some kind of magic spell to put him in the repeat cycle until he found love. It would have explained a lot more of why he was repeating the same day every day.
Yeah, that's the weakness about movies like that. It's like, lightning hit this well and we changed bodies. It's like, yeah, the exposition is pretty weak on a lot of those movies. Go ahead.
Here's one that I liked. It is a little bit more rom-com-y, but I saw it as a kid. The original Overboard with Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn. It was just funny because for those who don't know the original, Goldie Hawn was this uptight socialite who lived on a yacht. They were in Elk Cove, Oregon, trying to get some repairs done, and she kept referring to the city as Elk Snout. And she hired Kurt Russell to come do some remodeling on the yacht. He did it, but he didn't do it exactly the way she wanted, so she stiffed him on the payment and pushed him off the yacht. Then as the yacht is leaving, she fell overboard and like hit her head or something and got amnesia. Well, her husband refused to claim her from the nut house she got sent to. And Kurt Russell saw an opportunity to get his money back, and he said she was his wife. I mean, nowadays, this movie would be seen as a human trafficking film. But because basically he turned her into slave labor for 30 days for her to work off her debt. And of course, in the end, they all get back together. But it was the juxtaposition of this socialite who, even though she had lost her memory of who she was, still knew she was a socialite, being thrust into rural Oregon, having to live with this carpenter. You know, the house was not exactly level. It slanted downhill going to the living room. The kids, the four boys, I think, were all they were all just absolute terrors. It was funny, but it is more rom-com-y.
It is definitely rom-com-y. No, it's a good movie. Actually, I remember it's not something I need to see again, but the obvious chemistry between Goldie and Kurt is so obvious.
Well, it helps that they're basically in a common law marriage in real life.
Yeah, they've been together for 40 years or something crazy.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like those movies, the Christmas movies where he plays Santa Chronicles, I think they are. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that.
Pretty good, and she shows up as Mrs. Santa Claus in the first one at the very end, which is cute. And in the second movie, she's in the whole movie with him as Mrs. Claus and getting on his case. So their chemistry has always been wonderful. I've always really enjoyed those two together. And she's great. She was such a little hottie and cutie back in the day, and when she had her little rise to fame. So, and
those that don't know, she actually did a nude scene in another comedy called Wildcats, where she was in the bathtub.
I remember that. Yeah, that was a shocker when I was in high school. I'm like,
it was a big shocker, but
Goldie Hawn's boobies? Wow. Okay, let's see. What do I got? I got 4 more. I'll get through these kind of quickly.
I got 3 more.
Okay, that'll work. Well, in that case, yeah, I'll go, and then you go, then I go, then you go, then I go. Okay. Everybody follow that? Let's see. Which one of these should I talk about first? The last 3 most people know, so I'll talk about this. It's a movie on, I believe, Netflix. I'm sorry if it's on Prime. It's called A Map of Perfect Little Things. And it's a Groundhog Day-esque movie. It's about this day that repeats over and over and over in this town. And this young man wakes up, and he keeps going through the same day, and he has no idea what's going on. Then he finds out that this girl that he has a crush on, this blonde girl, and she's a very good actress. I can't remember her name. She's been in a few things. Is also going through these days, and they remember everything that they go through the day before, and they know they're caught in a cycle, and they finally end up figuring out that they are both going through it and become friends. And the map of little perfect things is that they experience these little things throughout their town, because the couple's spoiled teenagers, they never noticed anything, but then you notice how many acts of kindness and all these really beautiful things that happen, and all these, they end up doing these cool things, kind of like Bill Murray does, where they save a guy from getting splatted by bird poop or something like that, and he builds this map of where they experience all these things together day after day after day after day, and it shares it with her, and it's just really cool. It's kind of a coming of age teenage love story, whatever, but the way they do it, no exposition, they just kind of go through it. You don't necessarily know why they're going through it, and of course they end up falling in love, and it changes their lives forever because they realize how beautiful the world is around them. Kind of cool. Yeah, softer side of Koop. It's
out on Amazon Prime, and the woman you're thinking of is Catherine Newton.
Yes, yeah, very good young actress. Very good. She's been in a bunch of stuff. So,
okay, I'm going to get into my last few. Are 3 that y'all are probably going to, cringe at a little bit. I don't care. I still love them. I'm sappy for these. The first one I saw, I believe, in 7th grade for the first time, maybe 8th grade. Roxanne, starring Steve Martin, a remake of Cyrano de Bergerac.
Love that movie. Love that movie.
Martin makes the movie. The best scene in it, if you haven't seen, Steve Martin's character of CD is in a bar. This one dude decides he wants to mouth off to him and makes him a bet that he makes a really bad insult of, "Hey, where you going, big nose?" For those who don't know the background of Cyrano de Bergerac, it was a guy with a really big nose. In Roxanne, they exaggerate it even more. But Steve Martin makes a bet that he can come up with 20 insults about the nose better than Big Nose. And just listening to him go through all of them, everything from when you stop to smell the flowers, are they afraid? Or the paranoid guy, keep that guy away from my cocaine.
Yeah.
That makes the entire
Finally, a man who can satisfy two women at once.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, it's
Oh,
great.
I'd hate to see the grindstone, but that's a good one.
That's a good one. That's the best one. Yeah, no, I love that movie. Good one. That should have popped in my head because, I've probably seen that movie 10 times, over the course of my
I've probably
life.
seen it maybe more than that.
Yeah, it's great.
For those who are wondering at the awkward pause, I finally found the mute button when I'm coughing.
Yeah, good job. I was kind of impressed with that. And giving me the signal. That was good. Good one. Another John Cusack movie for some reason. What was the name of the other one? He's been in a lot of like witty rom-coms. They have a little bit of edge to them. High Fidelity. Have you ever seen High Fidelity?
I have not. I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, great movie. It really appealed to me because when I was young, he owns a record shop, like an old school record shop, and Jack Black. This is like Jack Black's really big breakout role. Is one of his clerks, and Jack Black is they're all music snobs in here, that Jack Black will actually like yell at people for what they're picking out and won't let them buy it and chase them out of the record store. And Cusack's like, this is a business. Well, he has this very beautiful Swedish girlfriend, but he's kind of going through identity crisis in life, kind of ignores her, so she ends up hooking up with the neighbor in the apartment, who's played wonderfully by Tim Robbins as a hippie. He's Mr. like vegan, meditation, wearing the beads and all that kind of thing. So she ends up leaving John Cusack for him. The rest of the movie is really about how he's trying to figure out how to get her back. Now, I hate exposition in movies, but when they break the fourth wall exposition and the main character's talking about stuff and it's very funny and witty, I really enjoy movies like that. When they're looking in the camera and talking about stuff, it can be very good. That movie has a lot in it. Also, Jack Black does some musical numbers in this, which is kind of funny. Just the way the characters get along. It's a really cool movie.
Yeah, let me take issue with you on one thing. Jack Black's breakout role was not High Fidelity. It was Waterworld. It was Waterworld with Kevin Costner because he plays the pilot in that biplane. Let's give him proper credit, okay?
All right. Anything more than like 3 minutes screen time is what I was trying to say. But
yeah,
Jack Black was wonderful in this, and I'm a Jack Black fan. The guy could do anything, and I'd laugh. So I have a soft spot in my heart.
All right, my last two are going to give y'all, cringitis, but that's okay. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days with Matthew McConaughey and I can't remember her name now.
Kate Hudson,
that's it.
Goldie's daughters, coincidentally.
Yeah. I like the concept of she's trying to do everything she can, all the girlfriend quirks to get dumped right away. And he can't dump her because he made a bet that he would make a woman fall in love with him in 10 days. Everything from, when she names his genitalia to when she crashes poker night with the boys.
Right.
That's all funny. Some of the sappier stuff was okay, but I liked the premise when she's walking away and he's like, "I'm gonna make you fall in love with me," and he's like, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna make you wish you were dead."
What was cool about that movie? I like that movie too. I like Matthew McConaughey and her as actors.
All right then.
Yeah, all right. Did you ever? Quick aside, I gotta say, did you ever watch the series Eastbound and Down, the Danny McBride series where he plays the washer?
Not.
Oh God, that's something you can't watch in front of anybody, including Sherry. It's a typical Danny McBride kind of thing. But he plays. There is a scene where Matthew McConaughey is scouting Danny McBride. He's trying to make a comeback in Mexico, and he's a baseball scout for I think the Texas Rangers. And of course, Danny McBride's character is way over the top and stuff like that. And Matthew McConaughey does this scene that's immortal. He does a cameo where he plays a scout, and he's trying to talk to Kenny Powers about embracing his dream and striving for more. And he goes, "Look, I'm gay, and I suck my dreams dick. That's right."
Okay.
Yeah. So I need you, Kenny Powers, to suck your dreams dick. I'm sorry. I still hear that line in my head from Matthew McConaughey, and it was just fucking, I love that guy. So, what are we talking about as I got off on that? Matthew McConaughey, no. Okay, what I loved about that movie was it reminded me of those rom-coms. They didn't call them back then, but that's what most movies were, either like noir movies or rom-coms back in like the 40s and 50s, like Cary Grant and the way he and Myrna Loy would pitch off against each other in a movie trying to, it was very similar to one of those old school movies where you put them in this very strange circumstance and, oh, I got to marry your daughter. I don't want to, so they come across as like a creep or, and then they end up falling in love anyway, of course. But it reminded me of an old school Hollywood movie like that. That's what I liked about it.
I think it's your turn.
Oh, okay. I thought this movie was great. It's a bit of a rom-com, but it was complicated, and it's one of my favorite movies by this actor, but as good as it gets. I love that movie. Do you remember that movie? With
Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt.
And then Greg Kinnear.
When Helen Hunt was the all-American girl that everybody wanted to be with.
Yeah, she was the ingenue for about 10 minutes back then.
Yep.
Just a great movie. Kind of the way it examines his mental illness and his character development of where he and Greg Kinnear become really good friends. I love the scene where he takes Greg Kinnear in after he gets assaulted. It was kind of a hate crime and all this other stuff. And he takes Greg Kinnear into his apartment, even though he hated Greg Kinnear at the beginning of the movie. But he falls in love with Greg Kinnear's Griffin Terrier, and who falls in love with him. And there's a scene where he puts him up he's a rich man. He puts him up in a nice bedroom, and Greg Kinnear goes. He just looks at him. He goes, "I love you." And Jack Nicholson looks at him and goes, something to the extent of, if I was the kind of guy that floated my boat, well, that would really float my boat. Something along those lines. And then just some great, and when he's talking about how he'll get on medication for Helen Hunt, of course, the immortal line from that movie is, "You make me want to be a better man." And she's just like, you could see her face, that's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. It's just a cool movie. Feel-good movie. Everybody in it's fantastic. I love all those actors. So anyway, that's my second to last one.
Okay, my last one, and y'all may give me the most shit over this, but for several years, it seemed like every other rom-com out there starred Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore.
Yes.
The one that I like was 50 First Dates.
Did you like that one?
I did. Drew Barrymore lost her memory every night when she went to sleep, and Adam Sandler kept having to come up with new ways to pick her up and stick with her. One of the other reasons I liked it was I actually got to visit when they talk or they meet initially in a place called the Hukilau Cafe in Hawaii. A lot of it's set in Hawaii. For those who don't know, I lived in Hawaii for 7.5 years. I visited the set where the Hukilau Cafe was, so I got to see a lot of where it was filmed. That created a little bit of attachment because Sherry and I watched that movie.
Yeah,
and I really liked, one time he'd be able to pick her up real easy. The next time, she'd smack him across the face or something because he came off as a weirdo. So it also had, who's the guy in that played in Goonies and he played in Lord of the Rings? Sean Astin. That's it. I'm sorry. Sean Astin. He comes off. Yeah, he comes off as a really goofy, roided up dork. It's got the.
I'll have to watch that again. I don't really know it very well. I think I only saw it once.
Yeah, I can't remember the dad's name, but he he was in Waterboy. He played the weird redneck coach in not Henry Winkler's character, but like one of the assistant coaches.
Oh, you're talking about Jerry Reed?
Is that his name?
Yeah, he was like in Smoking the Bandit and shit.
No, not hang on, let me see if I can figure this out real quick. The Cajun coach in Waterboy, Blake Clark. That's it, Blake Clark.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Okay.
He was in that as the dad. I liked the woman in there. The scuba, the seal feeding woman. Rob Schneider was in there trying to play a native Hawaiian that had a messed up eye, and he at the wedding day would talk about how you still gotta have sex with your wife even if she gets fat and is gross, and his big fat wife is sitting there in the front row and flips him off. I said that's got a personal attachment for me because my wife and I watched that together.
Right.
So, and I got to visit a lot of the places, and it was shot a lot of it in Hawaii. So I enjoy that one.
Yeah, I saw it once and I remember liking it. Of course, it didn't make my list, but real quick, the nod to the gods. The Wedding Singer is one of my favorite comedies of all time. I love The Wedding Singer, and he and Drew Barrymore are very, very good in that. Lots of chemistry and the '80s soundtrack.
They're teasing another Drew Barrymore Adam Sandler movie.
I'd love to see it. I think they have great chemistry. Yeah, I'd love to see it. I like her. I know she's a quirky weirdo, but I like her quirky weirdness. I think she's.
Speaking of quirky weirdness, I think one of the funniest things that I ever saw was when you remember Drew Barrymore posed in Playboy.
I do, of course.
A while back, and it was still weird for me to see her in that because even though she's only a couple years younger than me, the first thing I ever saw her in was E.T. But
yeah, it is kind of weird.
But the funniest thing was when Steven Spielberg, as a gift, gave Drew Barrymore a copy of that Playboy, and he had gone back in and had clothes added to all of her pictures.
That's funny. I know they had a really good, like, almost father-daughter relationship during the filming of that.
Which is what made that, when she first got it, she's like, what is this? And then she opened it, and she had clothes now attached to all of her pictures.
I actually really enjoyed her in that series. Netflix should have kept it on for another couple of seasons where her and Timothy Olyphant.
Santa Clarita Diet?
I loved that show. I thought it was
I never saw it, but now that I've got Netflix, maybe I'll see if I can find it.
He's wonderful in that, and Timothy Olyphant is always good. I love him as an actor, so intense dude. Anyway, my last one, speaking of weird chicks, this chick is weirder than most. Silver Linings Playbook.
Never heard of that one.
Well, it's great. Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence, and they're both mentally ill. And Robert De Niro plays Bradley Cooper's dad in a very, very different role for Robert De Niro. He's very sweet and very trying to understand his schizophrenic son. And he keeps going in and out of the institution and having all these troubles. And then he ends up meeting he's obsessed with his ex. His ex leaves him because of dealing with somebody who's mentally ill, and he gets these borderline personality outbursts and these incidents where he gets not violent but raging and really suspicious of everything. So she ends up leaving him, and of course he's obsessed with getting his ex back. Obsessed.
Of course.
So he ends up meeting Jennifer Lawrence, who wants to take part in a classical dancing competition. Okay, and so he tries to learn with her how to dance. And a lot of very funny stuff going on. Robert De Niro decides that at the age of like whatever he is in the movie, 70 years old, he's gonna unretire and become a bookie. So he starts running a bookmaking out of the house, and it's a very conservative, nice house. He's got the wife, he's got his chair and his loafers and stuff, and wears a sweater all the time. And they're Philadelphia Eagles fans. It's really great. Like I said, a movie that doesn't have any exposition. You just kind of watch it. You enjoy the performances. Jennifer Lawrence, that was what... did she get her Academy Award for that, or was it the one she did after that? What happened? Did you mute yourself?
Sorry. I think she got that for the... Did she get it for Joy when she played...
Might have been Joy. Woman? I think she got nominated for Silver Book if she didn't get it, but... or Silver Book... what did I say? Silver Linings Playbook.
Silver Linings Playbook.
Silver Book Linings is what it was. So anyway, no. Another one that I would recommend. It's interesting. The writing's fantastic. I never thought anything of Bradley Cooper. Of course, the first thing I saw him in was The Wedding Crashers. Where he plays the complete asshole and didn't really have a chance to develop character in that one.
That's where I first noticed Ela Fisher.
Hard not to notice her. I can't believe she's married to Borat. That's the weirdest thing to me.
That is just...
Talk about odd couples.
It's like Twilight Zone kind of stuff.
I was going to talk about odd couples in the next piece, but we're going to have to table that because we've been on for almost 2 hours here. So, it's really enjoyable. Great character development. A lot of cringy moments, not from a bad writing perspective, because his mental illness puts him in such bad situations. And I really feel for that. It brought up a lot of emotions for me seeing what he's going through, and she's crazy too, and these two crazy people trying to get together. And when I say crazy, of course, I mean they have mental health disorders. It's really interesting, and Robert De Niro plays such a great character in that he kind of just mellows the whole thing out. He's kind of like the central strong he loves his son, doesn't know what to do with him, but does the best he can. And he has a brother that, the family cares about him and is trying to help him. But what do we do with our son, our mentally ill son, brother, and stuff like that? It's a really neat movie. I think you should watch it.
So for all those out there, you've now seen the saps that Koop and Russ can be when it comes to rom-coms.
That's right. I thought we'd, after the last couple of fiery podcasts we had, especially on my part, I thought we'd show a softer side.
Yeah. So everyone, stop sending us hate mail about how we hate all romantic stuff. We
hate everything, and Koop cusses too much, and yeah, I probably do. I think I didn't cuss a whole lot this time. I think I did pretty good.
Yeah, not too much. I let loose a few, but not many. And then I found the mute button for the cough. So.
Yeah, that's good. No, you did good. Well, I think I'm going to put this out there. I think this would be kind of fun for those of you listening. We're going to do a segment today. I think it would be a little overkill to do it today. People I can't be friends with. And I know we've done something like this before, but my list could go. This could be part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a million. People I can't be friends with and why. And so, any of our listeners that want to email us, those of you that follow us on Facebook at the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast Facebook page can, of course, message us. twogrumpybastards@gmail.com is where you could email us. So email your list. I would love to see what some of our podcast listeners have in this regard. We'll do that next podcast next week.
The alternate name for that is list of people I'd like to hit in the head with a brick.
Yeah, or as I like to say, a bag of doorknobs.
Yeah.
There's still a Facebook page out there that I came up when Facebook was fairly brand new, called Celebrities I'd Like to Hit in the Face with a Bag of Doorknobs. And it's still out there. I actually see it pop up in your groups. I should take a look at it. It was actually pretty funny for about 10 minutes. And until listener of the pod and friend of the show, Brett Jaffe, one of my old Army buddies, he you just go to the page and see his explanation. But Stephen Hawking was one of the people. Kind of took it right off the dark edge there.
Wow. Wow.
It was funny. He was being tongue-in-cheek, everybody. He didn't really mean it. He's a really great guy. But, I had people on there like Alec Baldwin and, people like that at the time. He went right for the throat. I'm like... and he had a really funny reason why. He's a very funny guy. Tongue-in-cheek. Anyway. Well, Russ, I think we'll wrap it up because I think we're heading into 2 hours. And with my slow internet connection up here in the booties, it's going to take me all night to upload this. So
that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, so I'll get this all edited and ready to roll. So anything else for our listeners? I'm going to do a separate little blurb as an insert for all the places you can find us, reach us, all that kind of thing, rather than crowding it at the end. So I'll do that separately.
No, and at some point we will eventually get some more guests on. I promise. We just I think in order to get real guests, we need some more predictability in when we're going to actually record the podcast because folks besides us can't just go on a moment's notice. But
yeah, I was going to talk to you offline or via text on that. We should probably at least maybe a week out, try to pick a day.
Yeah,
that might be smart, and we can let people know.
For those who don't know about the professional part of this process, what usually happens is one of the two of us will say, "Hey, you want a podcast in the next day or so?" And we're like, "Sounds good. How about by this time?" "No, I can't do it then. I'm doing this. So how about this time?" "Sure, sounds good." And then we just get together and do it. So It's not like we have a lot of consistency in the scheduling.
We do not. And, usually I send a proposed list of a couple topics. You give me your feedback. We kind of Viking mind meld on those, and then we don't get to half of them.
True.
We still haven't gotten to yours, the one that you want to do.
We'll get to that eventually. Just shows you where I stand in the hierarchy here.
Yeah. Well, we can do it next one too. We can do a couple of comedy sketches. I don't think people would mind break them up a little bit. We got awful serious there for the last 3 or 4. So, like I said, I was really fired up for the last one, and then my medication kicked in, and I kind of lost steam. So,
hey, look, everyone remember after Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Star Trek: Wrath of Khan, and The Search for Spock, they did a voyage home, which is kind of comedy-esque, so maybe we'll do that.
Right. I do, the fellas over at Endless Ranters, our friend Chris and Manny et al., they do a great job of telling their listeners when they're going to be on. They do live YouTube stuff. We're going to move towards that. Russ and I are pretty, not that Manny and Chris aren't busy people, but they're just more organized than we are. Russ has got a lot going on in his life. I have a lot going on in mine in a far different way, having to smuggle all that stuff in on the whoa, wait.
Whoa, let's not go there.
Whoa, wait. No. Kidding, but I have a lot going on in mine in a different way, so it's kind of hard to match up our schedules sometimes. They're much more consistent over the Endless Ranters. I appreciate that about them, and they let people know, hey, we're going to be recording and want to jump on. I really would like to go to that. We're going to have to change the tenor of those live ones. We're still looking for some help for some folks out there, so we'll figure out a formula for that. I think my goal is by April we're going to have some live ones going instead of the ones where Russ and I sit here and pontificate for 2 hours. That'd be kind of fun.
But people enjoy that. Do
they?
They do, because we're giving wisdom. They may not think they enjoy it, but secretly deep down they enjoy it.
I do get compliments on our official channels from a lot of folks. I don't get a lot of. We joke about it. I don't get a lot of complaints. I do hear about my attitude and about my language sometimes from folks, which I understand. I will try to pull back a little bit. I think I did a good job of that today. But no, I do have a Dora Hale, who's one of our old. And when I say old, I mean like from the very first day, our classic listeners. Very, very wonderful lady I know from my hometown. She listens to every episode, and she's nothing but supportive. And she said in the last one, she goes, I just love listening to you guys. You both are two walking encyclopedias. I'd say Russ is more like an encyclopedia, and I'm more like a
dictionary.
Hardy Boys collection. No, I'm kidding. But
I'm more like an Encyclopedia Brown.
Yeah, more like you.
Those who don't know the old detective stories, look them up.
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. Encyclopedia Brown, and then what would I be? I don't even know. Probably more like a Philip Marlowe type detective. Or
how about Tracer Bullet?
There you go. Or what was that? Hammer. What was that? Stacy Keach's character?
Oh yeah.
What was that guy?
Hammer it was on like a half-hour comedy show on Friday nights on ABC.
Oh no! It was like a real detective show. Stacy Keach. He wore the fedora.
Oh no! I was thinking about.
He's always getting into fights and shit. Better. Dan Tana.
Don't know who that is.
Vegas. Robert Urich Vegas back in the day.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, I'll take Dan Tana. Or better yet, not Robert Urich. What was the? Come on, he played Pappy Boyington in Baa Baa Black Sheep.
Oh, the guy in Wild Wild West.
Yes. What was his name? Robert something.
Robert Boyington.
Pappy is who he played.
No,
help me out.
Hang on a second.
He had a detective show where he was always going off and beating up people and shit like that. Not that I go off and beat up people all the time. That hasn't happened for a very long time.
I hope not. Yeah, Robert Conrad.
Robert Conrad. Yeah, maybe more Robert Conrad-esque. So.
Yeah, well, you could call me Encyclopedia Brown or Sheldon Cooper. The more endearing characters in television.
I'm like Robert Urich with a master's degree. That's me. So, anyway.
Okay, I think we've gone off the rails again. So
we have, but that's all right. As we're slapping ourselves in the back and saying how great we are. I do get that complaint a lot, by the way, but fuck you.
Yeah, just out there for my buddy Francis Moss, if he does happen to listen to this, that was one of his first complaints, was two guys sitting around and telling each other how wonderful they are. And
yeah, I got that from a friend of mine named Jeremy as well. He goes, yeah, you guys certainly pump each other up a lot.
But, we are pretty wonderful. I mean,
yeah.
It's hard to deny.
It's just, truth is hard. If you're not as wonderful as us and, you got a little inferiority complex, hey, you know what? I can recommend some good online therapists for that. Dialectical behavioral therapy would be really good for you.
Or you can just accept that we're your betters.
Hey, I'm not better than anyone in this room with me right now.
Well, that's because your coonhound's not in there.
No, he is. He's right there.
Oh, he is? Okay.
Yeah, he's laying right there.
Maybe you're number two.
He's bored. He's waiting for an adventure, so we're going to go on an adventure. But, all right, well, I will get this up tonight. I always say that, and it's like a couple of days because things happen. Because, unfortunately, our provider sometimes uploads half of it and crashes in the middle, and then I have to start all over again. It doesn't, give you credit for 9 hours of upload that crashed. You have to start from
awesome.
scratch. Yeah, most of them are like that. So, anyway, folks, thank you for listening. Russ, it was a pleasure as always, my friend.
Always, same to you.
And I hope, for Forrest's sake, that I was intelligible enough at the end of this podcast to make him happy.
He's never going to hear the end of that, I'm sure.
No, he's not. That's okay. We love Forrest. He's a good dude. Anyway, from anything else, Russ?
Nope, that's it from me.
All right. Well, I gave my shout out to Dora. I wanted to do that today to thank her for listening. And for the rest of you, keep your focus and stay wokeless.